Okay, thank you everybody and welcome today to the session. I will like to kick us all off and get us started here. So thank you very much everybody for joining. Thank you for patience there as well while we let everybody in. So my name is Gemma McAnally and I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Xperience, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's session. We're here to talk about something that affects every business regardless of their size or their sector, and that is the evolving threat landscape. Joining me today is my colleague Spencer Leah, the Xperience CRO, and Spencer will be providing you with information on the rollout plans for Inforcer and what they mean for your business. I'm also really delighted to have on our call today Will Connor. Will is one of the Inforcer co-founders, and today he's going to be introducing you to the Inforcer solution and also providing you with an understanding of why it's so important in helping us Xperience to secure your Microsoft 365 environment. So thank you both for joining us today. We have preempted this session today with some of the most frequent questions that we're getting asked. However, if you do have a question, the Q&A is open and we will be endeavouring to get back to you on these at some point during the session or later on today via your account manager. So please feel free to put in a question that has not been answered in today's session or reach out to us at the end and we'll endeavour to get back to you on these. So to kick us off, really, I wanted to talk a little about the threat landscape and how this is evolving. So we hear about it almost daily, cyber attacks making the headlines, disrupting operations and costing businesses significantly in terms of their operations. But it's not just media hype. The threat landscape really is changing, and it's changing rapidly, and it's also becoming much more dangerous. So why does this matter? It matters because cyber attacks are not only increasing in frequency, but they're also becoming much more sophisticated. They're becoming more targeted and they're becoming more damaging to the businesses that they're targeting. And the Microsoft 365 environment is an absolute goldmine for attackers. And the reason for this is because it sits right at the heart of your business operations. It's your email, it's your collaboration, it's your file storage, it's your identity. It's all there. So that makes it a very high value target for cyber attacks. So there is a lot of stake at this, and it's your data. So whether it's sensitive internal documentation, whether it's customer information or intellectual property, it's all incredibly valuable. And a breach doesn't just mean downtime, but it can lead to financial loss, it can lead to reputational damage, and it can also lead to quite serious regulatory penalties. And when we speak to regulation compliance, it's no longer a nice to have, but it is a must. So frameworks such as Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, the NCSC guidelines, they're all setting the bar for what good security looks like. So staying compliant, it's not about ticking the boxes. It is about protecting your business. It's about protecting your customers and your reputation. And it's very much about starting to build up trust. So here at Xperience, we're taking this responsibility incredibly seriously, and we're continuing to invest in the tools, the technologies, and also the practices that are going to help safeguard your environment. So today, alongside Spencer and Will, I'm really excited to introduce the latest step forward that we're taking in helping protect your environment, and that is Inforcer. So with this, I'd like to hand over to Will. He's going to talk to you today about the investments that are being made by Microsoft and why that has become so important in tenant management. He's going to be talking and providing some information and some examples about that absolute, that pace of change. And most importantly then, how Inforcer is helping to set and monitor the foundations of your business. And he will also be touching on some examples of how the tooling will be used within your tenants by us at Xperience. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Will.
Perfect. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. Just going to make sure I can take control. Perfect. So as Gemma mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Inforcer and wanted to start off with just a little bit about Inforcer as a business. So we are a UK-based business. We're headquartered from Richmond in London. We are globally located. So we've got offices in the US, in Tampa, and in Los Angeles. We've also got European headquarters of Amsterdam and a small satellite office in Copenhagen. And then we'll also have a team over in Melbourne. So we've got around-the-clock support for our IT service provider partners. We only work with managed service providers, so businesses like Xperience. And the reason for that is all of our team come from this space. We've got over 120 Microsoft 365 experts, and we're growing quickly. We're actually helping to secure over 50,000 businesses across the world right now, and that is also growing quickly. And I think because of that, and because of our expertise in the space, we have recently formed an exclusive partnership with Microsoft to bridge the gap between the IT service providers, so Xperience, and Microsoft themselves, to ensure that Xperience are right on the cutting edge of Microsoft security. I've been in this industry for my whole career, so over a decade now, and really passionate about helping businesses to go on that journey of evolving Microsoft security. And a couple of slides here, just pictures to show some of our team educating the market around Microsoft security. And the final picture I've got here is actually the global director for Microsoft Intune. You may or may not have come across that product. It's likely that Xperience may already be utilizing it on your tenant. It's a mobile device and mobile application management solution, which is part of the Microsoft Security Suite. So Lior there is actually presenting to a group of our partners about the special relationship that we have between Inforcer and with Microsoft. So in terms of the product itself, we're building the next generation Microsoft 365 management platform specifically for IT service providers. So the real focus here is to provide best practice to make sure that businesses like Xperience are right at the forefront of security with all of the most critical and most up-to-date security practices right at their hands through our tool. We're then enabling them to proactively monitor and alert on different threats within your tenant. So it could be policies being changed by a bad actor. It could be general 365, admin accounts being created, or admins without MFA. Just things to look out for in the evolving threat landscape, because your Microsoft tenant is absolutely critical to your business, and bad actors and businesses out there looking to cause problems absolutely know that. As well as that, we're actually backing up all of the policy config on your tenants. That's going to enable for quick restore. So as you guys will already know, the value of backing up data, but backing up the configuration, the security configuration on the tenant, is just as important, because if there is a problem and you need to completely restore your business back to how it was before an issue, maybe it was a ransomware or something like that, well, it's all well and good having the data, but of course you need to have all of the security critical information, the configuration, able to be restored quickly as well, to enable the data to be secure when it is restored. We've got some custom reporting, which I've got some examples of. I'm going to show that, which the team at Xperience will be delivering to you guys as part of your service. We help with automation, and again, I'm going to touch on why that's really important for Xperience to actually have in place. Dashboards, which I've got some example of. We've actually got AI embedded into our platform to make the whole process of documentation and understanding the impact of rolling out policies so much easier. And as I mentioned already, we've got an exclusive Microsoft partnership. This enables us to help make sure that you've got 0-day access to new features, and I'm going to cover quite a lot of that as we go through the deck. So the other side of things is we're actually providing an ongoing update service to our partners to make sure that Xperience know exactly what's changing in Microsoft and the impact, so that if they want to roll it out, and if it forms part of the security plan and their baseline, they're going to easily have access to all of that information. So it's a little bit about why Xperience would partner with Inforcer. And then really I want to touch on for the next few slides is why Microsoft security. And I think over the last few years, Microsoft security has really come to the forefront as a leader. And in fact, some of you may have come across the Gartner Magic Quadrants before. So they essentially take different software products and different companies from different industries, and they map them out into these quadrants. And over the last 6 years, Microsoft has gone from kind of in amongst a lot of other vendors for endpoint security to actually being a visionary leader. So right there at the top right. And ultimately, I think one of the main reasons for that is their investment into their security platforms. So $20 billion they committed to security R&D over a 5-year period. It's quite incredible, really, because I'm actually just going to go back a slide. And just to give you some context there, businesses like Sophos, who are there in the middle, their revenue is $1 billion a year. CrowdStrike up there, their revenue is $3 billion a year. So the fact that Microsoft are actually matching that in their R&D just shows that they are way ahead when it comes to the investment in security platforms that they're developing. They also have 34,000 engineers working on their platforms for security alone, on top of all of the AI that they've got in place as well. It's just incredible. And I sometimes think about the amount of updates that we make as a business with an engineering team of sort of 30, 40, and then compare that to having to deal with the updates that 34,000 engineers would be making. It's really quite incredible. And I'm going to touch on that as we go through. And in terms of the data that they have access to actually protect proactively against threats, they're seeing 78 trillion security signals per day globally. Now, to put that into context, I've brought up this slide again because I just want to point out the CrowdStrike here at the top right. And by the way, great product, but just to give you some context, they are seeing 1 trillion per day. So that's 78 times the data. And all of those things, I think, are enabling Microsoft to really take a step forward ahead of their competition and just generally moving their products to the forefront of security within the global endpoint management sphere, but also identity and device management. So because of all of that, we are seeing the Microsoft Secure Score, which if you haven't already spoken about, I would imagine the Xperience team will be talking to you about a lot more as they push forward with this new service line with Inforcer. But we're seeing the Microsoft Secure Score becoming one of the most used metrics in cybersecurity. I think part of that is due to the huge amount of businesses now that do operate their businesses through Microsoft 365. And one of the other reasons is we're actually seeing, and this is from Microsoft's homepage on Secure Score, that they're now working directly with cyber insurance providers, where they're going to be tying in your Secure Score in Microsoft to your cyber insurance premiums, and that's definitely going to be something we're seeing a lot more of over the next year and into the future. And so I wanted to cover a little bit on, well, what is Secure Score if you've never come across it before. So, look, Microsoft's definition is talking around, assessing your current security posture and identifying improvements based on, the Microsoft 365 workloads. I mean, ultimately, what that really means is, well, it's a percentage score based on how many of the security features in your tenant you've got correctly configured on your tenant, and that's relevant to your license. Of course, with these kind of scores, the higher the better. And what's really important to be aware of with this is that when Microsoft make critical security feature updates, if you don't roll them out, your secure score will decrease. And so therefore, to maintain a really good secure score, and by the way, secure score, almost no one has a 100% secure score. What we see in the industry is actually a 70% secure score is very good. Getting up towards 70, 80 secure score is excellent. And actually, when it gets to sort of 90 and above, it almost becomes a little bit unusable. And that's where working with a business like Xperience is really important, to figure out that sweet spot between a really great level of security and usability for your business. And we've got the modern workplace, and this is a term that's talked about a lot within Microsoft. And their definition here is a collection of tools that use cloud technology to help businesses improve productivity and collaboration. And when I read that for the first time, my first thought was, well, what about security? And I think it's really important to consider that, because, of course, when Microsoft release new features, they're not always defaulted to the most secure method, because as a business, of course, Microsoft want to grow and add more profit and revenue. And of course, enabling you guys to be productive and collaborative gives you a great experience. If you can share links with everybody and you can, download all the apps that you need without having any security concerns, of course, that's going to sometimes feel freer to do your work, but ultimately it's not always the most secure way to work. And that's why, again, working with Xperience can really help to enable the right point in which usability and security meet. And what's really important is that really Microsoft is not fully secure by default. All of these things need to be configured and maintained. So I just wanted to share, this is the kind of thing that's included in a Microsoft 365 business standard license. And all of these little boxes you'll see are mainly focused around kind of business applications. There really isn't much security in here. You've got, a little bit around MFA, so multi-factor authentication, but it's very basic. It's a single layer of MFA. And when you make the jump from business standard to business premium, you unlock a huge amount of security. This is enterprise grade security, really at an SMB price. And you're unlocking things like Enter ID, which is going to enable conditional access. Conditional access is a amazing way to protect your identity by layering up conditions for access. So that may be MFA, but it also may be location based, or it may be based on your business's IP, locking down to ensure that if someone does get hold of your username and your password, they're not just straight through the door. It's also unlocking things like Intune, which I mentioned at the beginning, which is going to help to protect either your corporate-owned devices or even just the applications on sort of bring your own device type situations where you've got personal devices managing business information. It's also unlocking Defender, which is a brilliant tool, which is actually what that Magic Quadrant was talking about. Defender is going to enable the option for email protection with Defender for Office. It's also going to offer things like EDR and antivirus for your business devices through Defender for Business. So there's a huge amount of things which become unlocked through that upgrade to Business Premium. But what's really important to be aware of is that almost none of that is turned on by default. So all of those little boxes that just appeared on the screen, when you upgrade to Business Premium, they don't just get turned on, and they definitely don't get configured in the most secure way, and especially a way that's suitable for ensuring you guys that security and that usability. That's why working with Xperience is going to enable that with this new service to really align to the baseline that they've configured to both best practice of frameworks like NCSC and CIS, but also taking into account that usability side. So just to simplify that, my point here is that actually using a license like Business Premium can be a really complete offering when it comes to security. So you've got all of the business applications that typically you're probably already running your business from, but layered into that, you're getting your identity protection with your Entra, you're getting email protection, device protection, and all the rest of the things here which are coming included in that license. Now, something we're talking a lot about at the moment is this concept of your Microsoft tenant being the idea of the new server in a cloud-based environment. So you may already have transitioned to being fully cloud-based, so not having on-premise infrastructure in your office and on servers on site. It may be that you've not possible to ever get 100% cloud first because you've got some applications that require on-prem servers. But in those cloud-based environments, all of that information that would have been in that server is now in the tenant. And those tenants need to be proactively managed. They need to be proactively monitored. They need to be proactively backed up, just like that server would have been on site. The benefit, of course, is that you don't need to buy a new tenant every few years when it because it's got no hardware that needs to be refreshed. But you do need to be patching it with new security policies on a regular basis. So just in terms of a visualization of this, is you may have already seen this kind of image or even had this on site yourselves. This is what it probably would have looked like to protect those servers previously. Now, it's a sprawl of different layers of attack surface, which all need to be protected with different policies, different products within the Microsoft suite that really focus on securing your identity and also the wider environment of your attack surface in general. Now, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit difficult to always keep on top of Microsoft changes. So if we think about all that investment that they're making today and the number of engineers they've got building into their solutions, I took a look at the roadmap for Microsoft 365, and there is hundreds of planned new updates just for Microsoft 365 in development right now. I mean, they're not far off actually launched 1,000 almost new updates, and this is just in the last 2 to 3 year period. It's about 2.5 years. This whole period that I'd filtered on. It's really incredible, and it's great that they're adding so many great new features, not just on the security side, but on the productivity side as well. But the challenge then is actually staying on top of all of those updates. And I wanted to sort of hone this back down into specifically the business premium license, talking about security. And so with that, I refiltered on the last 12 months just for the security products within business premium. And there was actually 50 updates that were made. And obviously that's significantly less than the previous slide, but 50 updates is still a huge amount to stay on top of. And it's really all about figuring out what are the most important updates to make, what's going to have the biggest impact on security, and also tying it back into that usability piece. And that's what Xperience are going to be working on in collaboration with Inforcer, just to enable you guys to be fully protected and also still able to utilize all of that. But I think what's important is just taking into account that, as I mentioned already, the Microsoft tenant is ultimately insecure by default. It does need to be configured. All of those little boxes need to be created appropriately and continuously maintained as Microsoft make updates to them. And I mentioned why it was important to have automation in place around this. I found this stat I thought was really interesting, that 68% of the breaches in 2024 globally, once they'd gone through the root cause analysis, was found that they were caused by human errors and poor configuration. So having a tool like Inforcer in place to actually automate the delivery of some of these policies to ensure that what you're putting in is what you're getting out is really, really important. And I also just think this is a really telling stat that 99.9% of unauthorized login attempts could be blocked by simply enabling MFA. So making sure that the basics are in place really are the fundamentals for protecting your tenant. And then there's so much more that you can do from there. There's another side to this as well, and you guys may resonate with this. A lot of businesses now are starting to use applications such as Sage, Dynamics 365, and often they're going to be using single sign-on, so SSO via your Microsoft account. And essentially what that's doing is by giving the access into those cloud-based tools, like perhaps Sage that has your financial information in, giving it access via your identity within Microsoft means it's more important than ever to protect your Microsoft identities, because if somebody does manage to get hold of that Microsoft identity, they're then able to access way more than just the data in your 365 tenant. So that's why we're so keen on making sure that we're monitoring and we're managing all of the critical security updates, and just making sure that your 365 tenant is at the forefront of the security roadmap for your business. And keeping up with all of those updates that we just talked about is actually going to enable you to be more secure. But I think what's also really important is Microsoft is spending all of this money building all of these great new features. And if you're not then enabling them, you're also not getting the most out of your investment into Microsoft. So by running with this kind of service where you're going to have your tenant managed and maintained on the security side, you're also ensuring that you're squeezing every penny out of that investment into your Microsoft licensing, which I think is really important. So I wanted to show you guys a bit of an update here of sort of some newsworthy items that I saw where actually Microsoft 365 security could have helped to solve some of these challenges. So for example, you might have seen this one. It was all over the BBC just earlier this month. So there was a business in the UK called KMP. They're a 158-year-old business, and unfortunately, they actually had to shut their business down following a hack. So it was a ransomware attack, and the ransom was 5 million, and they weren't able to actually recover the data. and they actually ended up closing the doors, which was 700 people lost their jobs because of this. And the craziest part for me was that this came from a hacker guessing a weak password. And it feels like seriously the basics of having strong passwords, having things like conditional access in place. But there are so many businesses out there that don't have this enabled right now. And I think usually people kind of think, well, it will never happen to me. But businesses of all sizes, from your smaller SMBs all the way up to the enterprise, they are the target for hacking businesses and bad actors right now. And I just wanted to cover kind of how this could have been stopped at a relatively high level, just with a few examples of policies that will likely form part of the Xperience baseline. So, for example, password protection policies. These are simply policies that are going to make sure all the passwords in your business have a specific length or a minimum length, a high level of complexity, and they can actually kind of ban specific policies that are highly used and overused that are easily guessable. It's just a really simple policy that can enable that password is just a bit more difficult to actually guess, like in this scenario. There's also then conditional access policies. So this is that part of that Entra suite that I talked about earlier. This is things where you can actually layer up different levels of security to stop people from just being able to access if they've got your passwords, your username, and perhaps your MFA token, which can be hijacked. Because then you can add in things like blocking risky locations or legacy versions of MFA, or even enforcing compliant device requirements. So that would be hooking into the Intune product based on, making sure that your device that you're accessing from is joined into the system and has the right security protocols on it. And even an update that Microsoft made in December last year, which is what they call strong strengths of MFA. So you may have had MFA before where it's a text. That's pretty low strength. Whereas you can add in something like phishing resistant MFA, which might be using something like the authenticator, or even using a FIDO2 key, which is a physical key you plug into your laptop. And they are really much stronger methods of MFA, which can help to prevent, even when someone has your token for MFA, getting access. So it's really important to start considering how you can start to use more of the 365 suite to actually protect your tenant. Another example that I found here is, so there was a lot of attacks, cyber attacks, on the NATO summit that was in the Netherlands. Again, it was earlier this month, and it was actually a Russian hacking agency called Fancy Bear. And essentially, they were targeting NATO-aligned governments, contractors in defence, logistics firms who were part of the event, and even the media. And that was really a huge scale of small to medium to larger business that they were going after. And ultimately, they were using 365 to try and push out for phishing to get people's credentials. If they did, they were doing session hijacking, which is getting that MFA token to be able to then bypass the MFA controls that you might have. And there's a lot of different ways that you could start to try and protect against this kind of attack. I put through some kind of basics here, and this is where some of the weaknesses came from. They were using legacy MFA, so kind of SMS-based MFA, which is easily phished. They were doing token theft. They were abusing the fact that there was a lot of unmanaged devices and badly configured sort of personal devices that had access to business information in these environments. And there was no proactive detection of malware. So with the Microsoft 365 stack, you could be deploying different policies here to try to actually protect against all of those weaknesses. So from Intune compliance, ensuring that the devices are protected and configured correctly, to phishing resistant MFA, which was also a great option to protect against the previous example I gave. There's the Defender suite. So Defender for Endpoint has got these things called custom indicators, which are proactively actually checking for the hashes of malware. So this is something that Xperience can push out proactively. If they see something in the news, they're able to actually manage those custom indicators and push them out across all of the tenants, and also start to monitor using Inforcer for all of this kind of unusual activity that may be happening on the tenant. And of course, if something does happen, then they can really quickly react, either using the restore functionality or deploying new policy to protect against different vulnerabilities that they may have seen across in the media. So those are two key examples, and I just wanted to touch on those to really help to bring this into like real business problems and outcomes, and how that using a tool like Inforcer and working with Xperience to actually deliver this best practice of security on an ongoing basis is really, really important. My final few slides, I just want to kind of segue a little bit into, if you guys are on the path or considering how you can start to implement AI into your business, it's really important that you get the fundamentals of security down first. So there's this idea of the foundation principle, and that AI is only as trustworthy as the environment in which it operates. And what's also important here is that your Microsoft 365 tenant is where your AI is going to live, essentially. So if you're going to be using AI like Copilot, which is going to be really, really useful for driving higher productivity within your business applications, hooking into your email, your documents in OneDrive, SharePoint, Loop, Teams, and all of the Office apps. And we use it internally and we love it. But it's really, really important to make sure that the data and all of the security around your tenant is in place first. And so this really does become the precursor to actually enabling AI and being ready for AI. Just some examples here of what's important in terms of the foundations. Well, as mentioned on the slide here, AI doesn't create a new security model, it uses yours. So that's why it's really important to have all of these policies in place on the tenant to actually enable you to go on that journey to start utilizing AI, using things like conditional access and role-based access, using things like sensitivity labels within your data and also your meetings, zero trust security, because if you don't have your data integrity properly in check, and also your security, if a bad actor gets into your tenant, they can then utilize the AI and start pulling all of the data through the channels in which it has access to. And of course, then having monitoring and threat detection in place can really help to mitigate any of those risks. I thought that this would be an interesting thing to actually go and ask Copilot all of the things that should be protected from AI, so from itself in an SMB, and this was just the start. So there's a huge amount of different parts of information which likely you've got somewhere in SharePoint or OneDrive or even in Teams, and as you can see, what Copilot's actually put in here is once you start unpacking what an SMB actually needs to protect from AI, it's like peeling an onion. There is just layers and layers of information, layers and layers of data that you don't want everybody in your organization to be able to ask AI to go and have a look at. So that's why it's really important to start layering up that data integrity, the governance, and the security. And so just in terms of some key takeaways, my clicker isn't working. There we go. Your Microsoft tenant is insecure by default, and so it needs to be properly configured and also maintained. Because Microsoft are making so many new feature updates every single year, it needs to be not just rolled out, but actually the reason why Xperience are going to be delivering this as a service is they need to go and test the impact of those sorts of new policies before they go and roll them out to your tenant to make sure they're not going to have a huge amount of impact to your business. Your Microsoft Secure Score is really important, and it will drop if you don't apply certain critical updates. The business premium license is really quite a complete package if it's been fully utilized and fully delivered. Your identity within Microsoft is incredibly important now because it's not just giving access to the data in the tenant. If you're using SSO, it is hooking into all sorts of different applications within your environment. And Microsoft 365 tenant security is the mandatory precursor to AI readiness. So those are my key takeaways for this. And just my final couple of slides, I just wanted to give you some examples of the reporting that Xperience are going to get and you guys are going to get by working with Inforcer. So we've got a customizable 365 audit where you're going to be able to have a personalized audit run against Xperience's best practice security policies and the baselines. This is going to enable really good visibility into your security roadmap towards getting towards that best practice. We've got things like MFA reports, which, if you're not 100% sure if everybody in your organization has actually gone and registered for their default method of MFA, for example, and actually is being covered by it, this is something that Xperience can help with by running these kind of reports. We've got a fully CIS, so the Center for Internet Security aligned auditing tool, so it can actually just run a check against your whole tenant here and start to look into great detail around all of the security controls, what's been configured, what's not, and start to build out that security roadmap for you. We've got just a few examples of the alerting that we're going to be proactively monitoring and alerting on for your tenants. So, whether it's a drop in secure score or whether it's new enterprise apps being registered, which can quite often be malicious, whether it's admins logging in without MFA or new admin accounts being created, we've got a huge amount of different alerts you can run, all the way down to have policies been changed, which is often something that a bad actor will do when they're into a tenant. They'll start changing things like mail forwarding rules in Exchange. We can monitor for all of that kind of malicious activity and alert the team at Xperience on that. And we've also got some really great dashboards which just give high level visibility into those security risks. So things like users without MFA, mail forwarding rules, and also the compliance issues here aligning with the Microsoft best practice. So thank you very much for your time, and Spencer, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Will. Really appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap what Inforcer means for you as an Xperience client. So the first thing is that, so what is it? It's a 365 security and compliance platform that enables us to automate. That's the key thing, to automate the security policies for things like Intune, Defender, and Intra ID. It means that we don't have to do it manually. It's all taken care of as part of our baseline, and that's a really important thing, as Will described. It also gives you that daily config backup, which again is automated as part of our service. So all of the settings that you have within your 365 tenant that we will have worked with you to build to get to that baseline and that underpin your Microsoft security score will be there to be restored in the event that there's a problem with your tenant or there's a security event. We'll be able to restore the data. And as Will says, once you've restored that data, you want to actually make sure that the configuration around it is secure and is at that baseline, which is really, really important. So the third point here is it actually gives you real-time risk alerts. So this is if somebody makes a change. So if somebody was to get into your tenant and to make a change and attempt to switch off MFA, multi-factor authentication, then that would be flagged to us. We would be able to intervene and make sure that you weren't compromised. And as Will said, 99.9% of compromises come through MFA not being properly enabled. So actually that one thing alone could have the biggest impact on your business. The final point here is about best practice benchmarking. So it means that we'll create a benchmark which will score your tenant against. That will be in line with things like Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, or the NCSC standards, depending on your business and the compliance standards that you need. And actually that is real time. So in theory, anyone could look at that and you could give them a real-time benchmark without having to go away and pull together lots and lots of different information. So let's talk about why that matters. Well, as Will said, there are lots of people using Microsoft 365. There are, in fact, more than 400 million people worldwide using Microsoft 365, and 70% of global cyber attacks are actually against Microsoft Office products. And just to put in context as well, there are 600 million identity attacks against 365 tenants every year, and that equates to 7,000 attempts a second of cyber criminals trying to compromise your 365 login details, as Will explained in some of the examples of recent cases where the simplest of controls consistently deployed will keep you, or will endeavour to keep you safe. So we already talked about the fact that it enables you to comply with audits, makes it much simpler, makes it much easier. If you were to get audited, you don't have to rush around pulling all the information together. It's there in a dashboard with many, many different reports that we can share with you. And the final point here, as Will mentioned earlier about insurance needs and regulatory support, is actually if you've got your 365 baseline properly configured, then it means that it will be easier for you to get cyber insurance. You may be able to get lower premiums, but it also means that you can be confident that you are complying with all regulations that apply to your business. And so, as I said, at any point, if somebody asks to see that, if any of your customers, suppliers, anyone that regulates you, you can show them where you are against that baseline and how you're enforcing those best security practices. So let's talk about the rollout and how that's going to work. So we're going to be rolling this out from the start of October. So by the end of October, all of our customers will have been enrolled in this platform. There is an early opt-in available, and we've already seen a number of clients that have come to us and said actually for various different reasons they do want to opt in. They want to take advantage of this service before October. So if you're in that position, then absolutely let us know and we will make sure that we opt you in early. So we already have multiple clients that are running the service. The first thing that we will do is we will benchmark you against the baseline that we've built. So working with Inforcer and using our own standards over many years of managing 365 tenants, we've built a baseline and we will score you. It'll be a personalized score specifically for your environment, for your policies, and we will tell you where you need to improve or things that need to be done to make the baseline or make you compliant with the baseline. And that will be fed back to you through your account manager. But please be assured that we won't be making any changes to your tenant, any changes that are going to impact users or usability of the system without talking to you about it first. And then the final point here is that actually your October invoice will increase by £100 a month. And we wanted to make the point here that actually we're heavily subsidising the rollout of this solution from Inforcer. It takes Inforcer license and the platform, but also a significant amount of our own time and services to do that. So there's zero implementation costs, and we've worked very hard to keep the monthly cost as low as possible because we want to make sure that all of our customers are protected. And that's why we've taken this step of asking customers to take this service and having to opt out if they don't want it. But we very much hope that you opt in now that you've seen all the benefits. So just as we close off, we're conscious that there may be some questions here, and I'm going to bring Gemma in to answer some of these questions. So the three questions that we've been most commonly asked are, number one, is there anything that I need to do? So as a customer of Xperience, is there anything that I need to do to prepare for this? Secondly, will there be any downtime for our business or our users? We appreciate that that's the last thing that anybody wants. And the final thing is, what changes will we see once Inforcer has been introduced? So are you okay to pick those up, Gemma, and answer those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So focusing in on that first one, no, there's absolutely nothing that you need to do. You'll be auto-enrolled there in October. What we'll do then is we'll have the tooling in place for you and the reporting started. So nothing that you need to do unless you'd like to opt in early, in which case please just reach out to us and we can arrange that. In terms of downtime, no, there'll be no downtime for your business or your users on the application of this baseline. Once we start running the reporting, if there's anything we need to discuss with you or reach out to you, that'll be done immediately via your account managers, which takes into account as well that third question in terms of what are you going to start to see. So once we start rolling out the tool, we'll be reviewing and benchmarking all of your tenants against our baseline, which we've discussed, and we'll be using the reports that Will has showed, and these will be available to you We'll start providing you with these, and we'll start to walk you through the information that's been presented. We'll start advising on key pieces, such as your security score, and we'll start to make recommendations on anything that's needed. So you'll get all of this reporting available. And as Will mentioned, we'll be starting to monitor and looking at the alerts that are coming through and making all of those changes in the background, but providing you with reporting on a regular basis so you can see what's happening in your tenant and within the policies. The tool's also going to help to identify any areas of your Microsoft license in which you're not fully utilizing. So as Will says, there's so much functionality within the license, and specifically within Business Premium. We want to make sure that you're utilizing that as much as possible and getting the most out of the investment that you're already making. So utilizing the Inforcer tool, that's going to allow us to actually look at what you're using and leverage more of your licensing, so allow you to start to take on some more of the features and functions that are in there. I will also there's been a question in the Q&A as well in terms of the £100 a month, and whether or not this is applied regardless of the number of users. Yes, it is. In terms of the application of the £100, it's £100 per month per customer, so it doesn't vary in terms of your users, etc. Because we're here, what we're looking at here is your tenant, and that we're managing your tenant. Other questions that we've been asked in the Q&A, I'll get back to. We'll take a look at those and we'll get back to you as soon as this is finished, and we'll try and address all of those for you today. So thank you, Spencer, for the questions. If you do have any further queries or questions that we've not answered, please do reach out to us, as I say, and we'll be more than happy to help, and we'll look at the other questions that have been popped into the Q&A and make sure we're getting back to you as soon as possible today to answer those. And really then, like that wraps us up for today. So that threat landscape will continue to evolve, but so will we. And with Inforcer, what we're doing is putting in place the tooling to help really mitigate against the risk that this evolving threat landscape is having on all of our businesses. So I'd like to really thank you all today for joining, and we do hope that you find this session both valuable and informative. And a thank you again to our speakers today, Spencer and Will, for joining us. So as noted at the start, this session has been recorded, and you'll shortly receive a copy of the recording and also the slide deck that's used today. So thank you again, everybody, for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gemma.
Cheers.